Welcome back to Flashpoint. Republicans in Raleigh poised to allow new abortion restrictions in North Carolina, and doctors have largely been at the forefront of this debate over abortion, working closely with patients, ultimately making just what is often a gut-wrenching decision about their health. Joining us now is Dr. Beverly Gray. She's an associate professor of obstetrics and gynecology at Duke University. Doctor, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So North Carolina lawmakers looking to restrict abortion at 12 weeks. You're the expert here. For context, at that point, where are most women at their pregnancy? And follow up, what stage is the fetus at that point as well?
So that's an excellent question. And I think I'm happy to explain a little bit about embryology. So when someone finds out they're pregnant, the earliest people really find out is when they miss their first menstrual cycle. And the first 2 weeks of pregnancy, you're not actually pregnant. So you have ovulation occurs around 2 weeks. Implantation happens a few days after that. And so the pregnancy really starts growing in like the third, fourth week of pregnancy. So at 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, the pregnancy test is positive. At 6 weeks, there's a pregnancy sac, or as we call it, a gestational sac that starts growing. And at that stage, the pregnancy is about the size of a dime. So it's not very much pregnancy tissue, and it's very, very early. There's maybe an embryo that you could see at that stage on ultrasound. Often you'll see what's called a heartbeat or cardiac activity around 6 to 7 weeks, but the heart really doesn't start developing until further on, a few weeks further along. That's really just electrical activity that you can see on ultrasound, which can be replicated in a petri dish. And so around from 6 weeks to 12 weeks, you have organs starting to develop. And currently we have a 20-week ban in North Carolina, and pregnancies cannot survive outside the womb at 20 weeks. And I think one thing I'd really like to highlight here is that there's a lot of misinformation out there about third trimester procedures. And I can tell you with assurance, in North Carolina, in the last year, there have not been any abortions in the third trimester. So the third trimester starts at 28 weeks. We have a 20-week ban.
As you mentioned, the current bill restricts abortion at 20 weeks. What difference do those 8 weeks make between current 20 weeks and the 12 weeks they're proposing there in Raleigh?
So there are a lot of things that can happen during that time. So the third trimester starts around 13 weeks. I've talked a lot about how pregnancy is a marathon. It is really hard on your body. And for some patients who have underlying medical illnesses like high blood pressure, diabetes, sometimes as they get into that second trimester, that marathon becomes really hard on their bodies. There are things that can happen that we can detect at that period of time. So genetic abnormalities, severe birth defects, other things that can be detected at either the 12-week period of time or the 20-week period of time when a person would have an ultrasound. And so for folks who have had a pregnancy before, you know that ultrasound at that 18 to 20-week time is usually a happy time, and a time where you find out the sex of the baby, you get some pictures. For some patients, they walk out of our office absolutely devastated with news that there's something wrong with their pregnancy. And so what I'm worried about with this bill is that, it's very unclear which patients who receive those diagnoses, who have medical complications between that 12th and 20 week, will be able to receive care. For teenagers, they may have irregular menstrual cycles. They fall into that window. They may be afraid to tell their parents that they're pregnant. For patients living in poverty, they may be saving up money to pay for care because in North Carolina, like many states, about half of people are covered by Medicaid for their pregnancy care. And Medicaid does not cover abortion care. So patients have to save up money out of pocket to pay for that. And, if you're working an hourly wage, if you are one of the 60% of patients who already have kids who are seeking abortion care, it can be challenging. And so this bill has so many barriers for our patients. So multiple in-person visits that are not medically necessary. We only have 9 counties in North Carolina where there are clinics, so it's already really challenging for patients to get to a clinic, especially if you live in a rural part of our state. And so with waiting periods to get in, with multiple in-person visits, the barriers just got impossible for a lot of people.
How medically sound do you feel like this bill is? And how much of it do you think is politics?
This bill is not medically sound. I think there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of, I think myself and my colleagues, we tried to counsel our legislators about what the realities are in medicine and kind of the realities that we face. We gave examples of patients that we care for every day. And I can think of so many examples of patients that I've cared for in these past few months who had medical complications that maybe didn't meet the very strict definition for care. And I worry about these patients very deeply.
I was going to say, what do you see as the repercussions this goes through? What do you think this means for women and families across North Carolina?
So unfortunately, we know that in states with strict abortion bans, which I would put this under a strict abortion ban, that maternal mortality is higher in those states. And I worry about our already marginalized patients who are struggling to make ends meet, who are living in poverty, who might be forced to continue a pregnancy that could put their lives at risk. And I worry that our maternal mortality numbers are going to rise. We're already living in a maternal mortality crisis. And I think this is going to make it worse.
And not enough people are talking about that, including folks in Raleigh and in DC as well. All right, Doctor, thanks for coming on and talking to us. We appreciate your expertise.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Coming up next, we hear the other side of this debate. An anti-abortion doctor describes why this bill is the right move.